laptops.
Okay. You put your charge on it?
Yes, it's plugged into the main.
Okay.
So good evening, everybody. Welcome along to another Blether. This week's guest, if you haven't guessed by the picture in the background, comes from the Kilchoman Distillery. Not only comes from the Kilchoman Distillery, but founded, created, devised, I'm not sure how many other words we can use, invented the Kilchoman spirit, as it were. How are you doing, Russell? How are you?
I'm doing very well. Yeah, absolutely. Had a nice day up the coast again today. So, just had a little wee surfing turf for dinner. Got a nice wee lobster. So, yeah, it was good.
Good evening, Jeremy. First off, the bat and the welcomes. Jeremy's watching on Facebook. Remember, you can watch on YouTube as well. So feel free to join us, whatever you feel more comfortable joining us on. Fraser McFarlane, so our latest whiskey ambassador, Fraser McFarlane.
Oh, has he done the course? Oh, cool.
He did the course with us 2 weeks ago, and the results came in today. He passed, so well done, Fraser.
Congratulations, Fraser. Well done.
Brilliant news. So yeah, he's obviously feeling in the mood for a whiskey, joining on.
Absolutely. So celebrate.
Let's in your glass, guys, and I'll tell you what's in my glass. I have got last year's Founders Cask released. Also sherry hoggy. 322 bottles of pure peated sherry goodness. It's absolutely incredible. I think they released a port cask at the same time, round about the same time, and got both of them to try. So that's what I've got. What have you got, Russell?
Well, I'm following you with a bit of sherry goodness as well, but I've got the 9th edition, the 2020 bottle of the. It's actually empty. I just noticed there was only a dram left. I thought I better have that. But this was the club edition. The club edition. So this is an unpeated Kilchoman.
Oh, wow.
I guess unusual. It does. There are peaty notes through it, even though it's unpeated. It does say in the bottle that obviously coming through the system, there's going to be peat there. So there's a very, very subtle hint of peat there, but it's unpeated barley that's going to make that. So 1 dram left in that. So I'm then going to move on to the bottle I opened last night, which is the PX from 2021,
nice.
Which is absolutely delicious. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. But no, I noticed there was only a dram left. So I thought I better just have that tonight.
We've got Antia in tonight. We all know Antia very well. Welcome along. Thank you for joining us. And we've got Rajan. I probably pronounced that terribly. From Atlanta Scotch Club.
Oh, Atlanta.
So welcome,
cool.
Welcome across the seas. And Fraser celebrating the news that he is now a whiskey ambassador with tea.
The tea in a Yorkie.
There we go. What better way to celebrate, eh? Good old traditional tea in a Yorkie. Well, guys, you haven't come on to listen to us blethering away. You've come to be our guest. So if you do have any questions, feel free, pop them in the chat. And we will get around to asking as many as we can. And we will bring Anthony in. So, Anthony, there we go. Quick as that. Nice. Good evening. How are you?
Good. Yeah, very well, very well. It's been a wet and windy week on Islay. We get used to it this time of year. But we like the rain. It's good for distilling. So we're all happy over on Islay at the moment.
Absolutely. Tomorrow's whiskey indeed, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So welcome along. Thank you for joining us, first and foremost. It's a pleasure to have you on board the Blether series. And, so just once again, guys, fire on with any questions, and we will see where the Blether takes us. Completely unscripted. We don't know where we're going to end up. Basically what we want to do, Anthony, is find out about yourself. You started your Kilchoman adventure 2005.
Well, I started it a bit before then.
How long in the mindset was that? How from the idea to groundbreaking?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been in the drinks industry all my career, just a bit of background, and wine trade for 15 years, and then moved up to Scotland in 1994, I think it was, and started an independent bottling business, had the connections, and we just at the sort of upsurge in independent bottlers and certainly single casks from various distilleries around Scotland, and that was great fun. But I wasn't I hadn't done it for very long, and of course the old Gordon MacPhail and Signatory and Douglas Lang had been around for a long time, so it was getting more difficult for me to source of casks as the industry took off in terms of premium end of the whiskey market. And you know, a lot of people had thought about it before I did, about building a distillery. But maybe they didn't have the balls to do it, and I just grabbed the opportunity and the chance and did it. And I think if I poured over the figures and looked at it, I think my accountant would have dragged me off and put me away in a home somewhere, because it doesn't stack up particularly. But I just had this belief that you know, I was finding it difficult to get hold of the cask I wanted to as a relatively new player in the independent bottling business. And you know, I just sort of thought, Christ, there's a bit of a turn in interest in premium single malt, and you know, why not build a distillery? I just thought about it like that. And you know, you said I started in 2005. I started putting the whole project together in 2001, and it took me four years to get there. But mainly because of raising the money was not something that anyone had the appetite for back then for single malt distillery. Why would you build another bloody distillery? There are over 100 in Scotland already. Are you completely bonkers? Well, probably that was right. And I think, you know, trying to raise the money was the hardest thing you could imagine that back then, especially when you sat people down and said, well, you know, give me your money, you might get a return in 15 years' time if you're lucky. You might have to wait a lot longer than that. And so that turned people off immediately. You know, that's transformed now into people investing in either bottles of whiskey or in distilleries or casks, and so it's completely transformed. But I feel fortunate we managed to put it all together and bring it off when we did. Christ, it was tough times. So I've been, you know, we nearly went bust 3 or 4 times, but fortunately my investors stuck with me, and they're now reaping the rewards in some way. I mean, we've got a long way to go. It's been a tough journey, but you know, I think timing is everything in this world, and I think we got that about right. But then you make your own luck in this world, and you know, I think that plenty of other people in the industry thought about it, but quite sensibly thought it was a bit too risky at the time, and I just got on with it. And maybe that was being a bit naive, and thinking that maybe it would attract investment when I'd actually built it. Unfortunately, the right people came through the door, and we've taken it on from there.
Was it always Islay? Was it always going to be on Islay? Was that
I still believe that regionality for single malt is still very important. There's no doubt that the biggest and most important decision we made was building it here on Islay, this, you know, wonderful island that has got a famous reputation around the world. Mm-hmm. And so we basically piggybacked on the success of the other distilleries on Islay, who've spent a lot of money marketing and selling wonderful single malts around the world, and we've come in on their slipstream and had some success.
Really?
But it does help that my wife's family had a place on Islay, and she'd been coming to the island ever since she was a tiny girl, and then when we met, we started coming to the island, and so persuading my wife to move back to Islay was key, and she was very keen to move back. So it was a straightforward choice. We didn't even look at anywhere else in Scotland. It was going to be Islay. Yeah,
right.
Islay seems to be an island that people want to go home to, if you come from there.
Yeah, I think unfortunately now, you know, jobs are available, and the industry, Scotch whisky industry, is very buoyant, and the island economy is very buoyant, and you know, now we got the other issues that go with that success, which I'm not going to bore anybody with tonight, but there's plenty of other issues that probably people know about. But you know, yeah, we're very fortunate. Very fortunate.
There's been a lot said about infrastructure, and I'm pretty sure people will find a way around of being able to sort that out. I mean, going back to your, you know, saying having the balls to do it, I think fortune favours the brave, and thankfully that's kind of working out the way it has. But I mean, I'm thinking you didn't do anything like gin or anything like that to kind of make money in the early days. So I mean, that must have been difficult times.
Yeah, I took the decision actually early on that we weren't going to do it. Probably, you know, as the gin, you know, I remember when Mark Rainier at Bruichladdich started his gin, and he got, you know, timing wise for them, it was right at the right time, just as the market was taking off. And I get why people want to release a gin, because it gives an income stream, but we took the decision not to. And in a way, I'm now that how it's panned out. I'm glad we just concentrated on the single malt and didn't get distracted by other things. But there's a very good reason why people are starting and making a bit of gin and selling it from day one, because you get some income, which you're starved of income for a few years. That's for sure. I mean, it doesn't make for great reading if you're a financial man. That's for sure. When you've got all these production costs, 35, whatever. So, Jesus, I can understand why people and bankers would be keen to see an income stream from somewhere. But look, I think I always say that we were fortunate where we've got, because I took that massive risk when I hadn't raised the bloody money. I mean, I couldn't, but I had enough to get the distillery built, and I had a few investors who came in from day one, and then I opened the door, and then the people that had backed it right the way through and supported it through good and bad just happened to be on Islay and came through the door when I was on bended knee begging for money, and they very, very fortunately supported it and are still very involved.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Yeah, that's a kind of, as Russell said, fortune favours the brave. That's a kind of good news stories that we need nowadays, don't we?
Yeah.
There's so much negativity now, but and it's great to have. You're now 15-ish years since the project ground.
Well, no, a bit more than that.
Is it 2007, 2008?
No, we actually got underway late 2005. So our oldest whiskey is coming up for its 17th birthday on December the 14th. So it doesn't seem that long ago, to be honest. And a lot's happened in that time in the industry as a whole. I mean, it's extraordinary what's going on in the industry.
And you've expanded massively as well. Well, are you now at the point where your first dream of what the distillery would be like, or did the kind of increase come afterwards?
I think. Look, I had an idea of building a little farm distillery, producing, I don't know, 100,000. I just went with 100,000 because that's what Andrew Symington at Edward was doing at the time, and he was a smaller distillery. And I always joke with him about that. I mean, and we started slow, and I took the decision early on that we weren't just going to produce lots of single malt and hope that we could build a market and sell some spirit to the industry. I just took the decision that we're making enough to build a single malt brand and put it all away in the warehouse. That was what I wanted to do, and we'd grow production as sales grew, and I suppose, fortunately, people have enjoyed what we've done. And I have a huge amount of gratitude to Jim Swan, who a lot of people know about Jim's involvement in new distillery startups. But, right back in those early days in 2002, when I first met him in Edinburgh, and we just sat down and chatted about what my dream was. And he just put it all together, really. And I just literally said, well, we want to produce an Islay Star whiskey. But what's important, Jim, is that maybe we can release it at a young age, hopefully, So go away and design, and we want to produce about 100,000 litres. So just go away. And he said, yeah, I'll come up with something. And he came up with something. And by God, when the stills ran for the first time in November 2005, the spirit off the stills, Jim just tasted it and said, look, if we look after this and put it in good wood, that was his expertise, was in wood maturation. And he really drove that home in terms of wood maturation. We'll be able to release this maybe at 3 or 4 years of age. And that, to me, was key to the model that we'd got. It wasn't about saying, right, we've got to push it out at 3 years of age, whatever. It was about sitting down with Jim and him saying to me, we at 3 years of age, no, I think this will work. It'd be okay. And I think it was at the time that the whiskey enthusiasts end of the market and whiskey retailers and clubs all around the world was springing up everywhere, and they embraced it, and they embraced younger, not so well known brands and giving them a go, and that's where we kickstarted. And I think also Islay played a massive role. It was, who is this bloody Englishman coming up here and building a distillery on Islay? We better try his stuff. And fortunately, people have enjoyed what we've done, and so we're very grateful to all those people who bought a bottle and are enjoying what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Going into the business and making the model, and as you said, raking about for funders and people thinking you were crazy. What was it? Was it the businessman that went into the venture, or was it the whiskey enthusiast?
No, it's whiskey enthusiast. I mean, I think there's no doubt that if it was the business that went into it, they wouldn't have done it. I mean, as simple as that. Unless they had all the money in the world. I mean, I think that's the difference. If you have a dream of building a distillery and you've got loads of dosh, fine, just go ahead and have a dream of and passion for building a distillery, and you don't have to worry about raising the money. You've got it all yourself. But no, it was definitely the passion for doing something different, and understanding that the market was moving. I mean, you'll understand. I mean, having your shop at Inverurie, Christ, you've seen how things have just flipped on their head in terms of people's view on single malt whiskey and what they're prepared to have a go at. Yeah,
I certainly think guys like yourself, Kilchoman, paved the way for these new distilleries. You kind of set out and you've proven to people that it can be done. And I dare say, without yourselves taking that leap of faith in what you were doing, we might not have seen guys like Arden American or these kind of chaps, Lindor. You made it feasible, you made it possible for these guys.
Yeah, well, look, I'm not going to take credit for that. I mean, I think that I think all the other guys, maybe, and Arden American, you mentioned Arden American, I'm a good friend of Alex's, and sure, those guys came over and saw all the mistakes we made and didn't make them when they set theirs up. But look, I don't take credit for starting a boom in distilleries around Scotland. I think it was going to happen at some point, no doubt about it. It's just that I was the first one off the block. Aaron was 10 years earlier, but we were the first. And Daft Mill, don't forget, Daft Mill started at the same time, and the Cuthberts. I mean, and that's a completely different sort of financial model. I mean, it's from what we did, and I love what he's doing, and he's just enjoying making a bit of whiskey, but carrying on his farming. But I think that what's helped the new startups who've been to see me, and lots have, is that I didn't have that to go and see and find out how you build a distillery, because here on Islay there hadn't been one for 124 years. So, and there wasn't really the sort of person, the expertise out there that could help you. There were plenty of people who could help you build your distillery and get a spirit that you wanted. We made loads of mistakes. I mean, and I try to cut corners. Well, now I tell everybody that comes through the door, just don't cut corners. Go to the right people who understand the process and can build the kit. I'm talking about the Forsyth family, who are extraordinary family who built up a tremendous business. I tell this story all the time about Richard Forsyth Senior coming to see me, and he had the contract to build the stills and one or two other things. And then he said, well, we can do it all, Anthony. And I said, well, I can't afford you. Once he'd given me his price, I said, well, I can't afford you, Richard. You're far too bloody expensive. And he said, yep, you'll be back. And sure enough, about a year and a half later, I was back. Made loads of mistakes, put in a second-hand. Look, I mean, the one bit of kit you don't buy second-hand is the boiler. Your boiler that's going to run your distillery. I bought a second-hand boiler. Biggest mistake in my life. I mean, look, I learned a huge amount from the mistakes we made. And hopefully people, and I was very honest with those people that came to see me who were thinking of building a distillery, and they wouldn't have made the same mistake as I made. So they fortunately had someone to go to who was going to give them the right information. So, yeah, there we go. But it's great to see all these new distilleries. I mean, I think it's fantastic that the industry's flipped on its head, and the independent, privately owned distilleries are coming through, and it's been driven by the independent bottlers who sort of started this craze for specialist cask, single cask malts, and you wouldn't have thought 25 years ago that the big guys have been looking over their shoulders to see what the smaller guys have been doing in promoting premium single malt.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the independent bottling market. So you started your life in whiskey as an independent bottler. You've now gone to the distiller, but we don't see Kilchoman feature as an independent bottle. Is that stock? Is that you control stock control, or is it a conscious decision to make sure
I think it was a bit of a conscious decision in terms of we do bottle our single casks and distribute those around to people who want to buy a cask and feel that we have the route to market to do that rather than selling them to independent bottlers and letting them do it. So we've really protected most of our stock. Yeah, one or two. Some people on the chat tonight will say that, well, one or two have slipped through the net. And yes, they have. But on the whole, it's not something that we do and don't intend to, because we enjoy, I'm an absolutely passionate fan of single cask strength whiskies. And that's the way to drink your whiskey. And so I enjoy picking out casks for our customers around the world to give them something slightly different from our sort of mainstream releases.
Do you still do the independent bottling? Is that
no? That all.
Yeah.
I mean, it was all. It was becoming more difficult to source a cask I wanted to because of the way the industry was working, and the bigger independent bottlers had been buying stock for many years, and very wisely had put away casks for the future. I didn't have a lot of stock and didn't have the funds to invest in stock, which I had, because that would have been very nice, little nest egg. But no, so we did. We when I started Kilchoman, I put that all to bed and just closed the independent bottling down and just got on with running the distillery, because it's been it was 7 days non-stop pulling it all together. Yeah. But I've fortunately had my wife to support me, who still laughs about the fact that I said all she had to do was come in and set up the cafe and the shop, and then go away, retire. With at least a year or two. Well, she's still full time.
Mad laugh.
Yeah.
I just wonder, because it's quite cool that Philadelphia have released a bottle of Ardnamurchan. I thought that was quite smart. But it would have been quite cool to be able to release your own one as an indie.
I mean, look. Well, Alex is an independent bottler as well, and he kept going at that, and they've done a fantastic job. I mean, I'm a big fan of what they've done. Alex has had his ups and downs with Ardnamurchan. I mean, everybody has it, and what great whiskey they're producing, and I'm very proud of what he's achieved, because he deserves it. He's worked bloody hard to get, and I know, and he knows exactly what it takes to build and project manage a new distillery. So I take my hat off to all those guys who've done it, because it isn't easy. And unless you've got shed loads of money, it's a tough gig.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned Daphne earlier on, and the fact that they, from a farming background, started making whiskey, but they carry on farming, and the farming is more important to them. But you're involved in farming as well. So where does that sit in the level?
Yeah, I mean, I always thought that when we built the distillery, we have to have a point of difference. Christ, there's no point in building a distillery like every other one and just being the same. We needed to stand out from the crowd and have a uniqueness. And so, I came up with having a farm distillery and let's grow some of the barley and let's malt it on the traditional malt floor and take it through production into bottling. And I think, a lot of people, farmers particularly, say, Christ, you can't grow malting barley on Islay. I mean, the weather's bloody rubbish. You hardly have any sunshine, and that's very true. But it happened in the old days on Islay. That's how distilling started, and small farms around Scotland and growing a bit of barley, feeding most of it to their livestock, and making a bit of whiskey. So that's what I came up with. And coming to Islay as much as I did, I knew this farmer who everybody knew had the best arable ground on Islay, and approached him, and we sort of formed a partnership in him letting me have his buildings, and he grew some barley for us. And we're very proud of that. It's sort of single farm, single malt, and yes, it's not a large percentage of our production, but we're hopefully bringing more of the fields back into production, because we bought the farm back in 2015, and now we can do as we wish in terms of growing the business and building warehouses and growing more barley. I mean, I think that's key to what we want to do, and bring more of the fields back into production in terms of a drainage program. So look, the big thing for me, and what I'm most proud of, is producing a whiskey from scratch, from deciding what barley variety we're going to grow and taking it through. But it's bloody challenging here on Islay because we got the harvest in. I mean, this year's been very challenging. The weather wasn't great, and we started harvesting in the last week in August, and we finished it 3 weeks later. And normally, the year before, we did it in 6 days. Because the sun was shining but that happens very rarely. We just have to accept that. And, we're going to get the quality of the whiskey will be as good, but we won't get as much from it, from our barley, because the grains are a bit smaller and the yields will be affected. But we don't care about that so much. We'd like to. Well, we don't care as much as actually producing a whiskey that we're very, very proud of.
Yeah, that's probably more important. I mean, we had the exact opposite over this part of the world. I mean, I think our harvest was in before August was out.
Yeah.
Some of the old farmers were saying they'd never seen it completed so early. Just quite incredible.
Yeah. No, well, it always amuses me when I come to the mainland and go over to the East Coast and see the combines going in late July, and I'm going, Jesus Christ. I mean, we won't be starting for another month at least on Islay. But we have to wait for the geese to disappear before we can even plough and sow the barley, because otherwise they gobble it all up in a wanna. So there's certainly some challenges, but we Brooklady grow quite a lot of barley on Islay, which is great for the farming community on the island, and they grow a lot more than we do. But I mean, it's great to give the farmers something, something else in the cheap and cows, and growing a bit of barley and making a bit of extra money. So, there's a lot of barley grown on Islay. I mean, we're talking probably about 1,500 tons in total, which is pretty amazing because, 15 years ago, there was no malting barley produced on Islay, all just feed barley.
Yeah. And is all that barley malted on the island, or does some of it come over to the mainland for malting?
Well, I mean, we malt our barley on the island. Brooklady, I think, hope to be putting in maltings at some point, but they take it away. And Diageo obviously do have their maltings here on the island. So there's Diageo own the Portland maltings where we've been buying our malt from as well. So we have a combination. Yeah, about 20% of it's our own barley, and then we buy in commercial malt as well.
Okay. As a drinker of whiskey, were you always an Islay drinker, or is that something that grew on you through?
Before you answer that, we haven't actually asked you what's in your glass tonight, Anthony.
Well, actually, I like going back to old releases that I've done because I hadn't tasted them for a while. So I actually picked out of my own collection. This is 100% Islay single cask release we did for the shop, and it's an 8-year-old from our own barley. 6 years in first fill bourbon and finished for 2 years in Oloroso Sherry Hogshead, and I hadn't tasted it for a long time. And to me, the 100% Islay is a fantastic dram. It's light and floral and fruity, mainly because we mainly mature it in bourbon barrels. Mm-hmm. But the sherry just gives it an extra dimension, and suddenly you get sort of cinnamon and cloves on the nose, and at 57%, it's amazing, approachable, no alcohol burn or anything, and very lightly peated. And it's great to go back to some of these older bottlings that I haven't actually tasted for some time. So that's what I'm drinking tonight, and I'm actually rather pleased with that one.
Excellent.
If you do say so yourself, absolutely brilliant. The boys are still pretty heavily involved as well, aren't they? You've really made it a family focused enterprise there, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, that was never the purpose. I mean, I started the distillery and the boys were still relatively young. One was still at school and two were at university, and so when they came home for the holidays, they were set to work, and I think they were either working in the cafe or sweeping the malt floor or whatever they had to do around the place. And I think that that sort of gave them a passion for the whiskey industry, and then it happened slowly but surely, and I'm thrilled now they're involved and taking it forward, because they're now looking after the sales and marketing side of things. When I first started this business, I was traveling non-stop around the world promoting Kilchoman and going to shows with my new make spirit. I mean, it sounds absolutely mad, and people thought I was completely nuts. Why would anyone want to drink new spirit? But So I'm rather pleased that I've sort of slowed down that side of it. So now I can concentrate on looking after things at the distillery and the guys and their team, because we've got a team of people now involved with Antea and others, and Chloe Wood, who's joined us from Brooklady reasonably recently. It's they've got a bit of a team now, and they look after the sales around the world. They fired me from sales and marketing, and they say they brought a far better approach because I'm an old fogey and I don't understand the modern way.
We recently had Antea over to the shop a couple of times to do barrel tastings and then taste the shop, and she's a credit to you guys. She does a really good job, and really knows what she's talking about as well, which is
we're very lucky to have her, and she's incredibly passionate about her job, and she's doing a great job for us in various markets and Scotland particularly.
We've had a wee question coming in from Fraser, who's on Facebook, asking how much of the barley that's harvested actually makes the grade into the malting process.
Well, our barley, it all does, because it has to. Clearly, that question is could we sell it to a commercial maltings? The answer is no, they wouldn't take it because the nitrogen level is slightly raised, and it has to be at a certain level for commercial maltings to take it. And sometimes, we understand that. So look, no Islay barley would probably make the grade in terms of a malting specification to go to commercial maltings, but that's not the problem. We use it all. Sometimes the grain's a bit too small, but we're just not going to get as much sugar from it, and we take that on the chin. But we've got better at floor maltings as a speciality, and luckily we got two other distillers on Islay, Lefroy and Beaumont, who do floor maltings. So I learned a lot from them. But really, at the end of the day, it's trial and error. You have to just go out there and do it yourself, and we've got better and better at it. We've been at it 17 years nearly, and we've improved the yields that we get from it. But we've had to change the methods a bit, but I understand it a lot more now. But actually, people really enjoy seeing floor maltings done in the traditional way, and taking them onto the malt floor is one of their highlights, because then we get them to work. If they want to work, they can go and turn it. We do it all by hand. If they're there on the day that we're actually putting it up to the kiln floor, well, we give them a shovel and they get on with it.
Yeah, that's great. We're lucky in Aberdeenshire. Glengarry have just reinstated the floor maltings as well, so it's great for the region. I think as an attraction as well. People want to go and see that. So hopefully that kicks off for us down here.
I think it's great. Yeah, sorry, carry on.
Yeah,
sorry.
I was going to jump back to a comment that came in from Kevin way back near the start. And I've kind of deliberately been avoiding it because there's a lot of words in here that I have no chance of pronouncing properly.
Including his name, which you did very well, because we had to ask poor Kevin about
we had to ask
a million times.
Kevin said Rosa Angelica was used by the Beaton family to make surgical spirit. And Kilchoman is one of 3 sites where spirit was made via the marriage of these two people in 1299. So a little bit of history there as well, a connection to whiskey that goes way back beyond John Corr and the like. So
yeah, well, there is a story that goes around with the art of distilling came to Scotland via Kilchoman, but there is no proof in that, and that the physicians of the Lord of the Isles lived at Kilchoman, and the Lord of the Isles they controlled the whole western seabang of Scotland, and they brought the art of distilling. But we always talk about it, but there is no absolute proof that was the case. But it's a good story anyway, that's for sure.
Absolutely. I would say the Irish invented whiskey, but they were always too drunk to write down the recipe. So I think Scotland, we knew that we could make money out of it, so we made sure we wrote it down.
I think the Scots were a bit cannier than the Irish, and they just pinched the idea and went with it, and the Irish got left behind a bit. Yeah, they're catching up again now though, with the number of distilleries that are starting over there. Yeah,
absolutely. I was going to bring that up as well about the world of whiskey has changed so much since you guys started. What have been the kind of key trends that stood out for you? Is it world whiskey? Is it independent whiskey? Is it different styles of casks? Or what are the kind of things that have piqued your interest?
I think that I think it's great that there's, well, every country in the world is now making whiskey of a sort, and you know, the cask maturation is the thing that I think stands out as something that will carry the test of time. And we know in Scotland, you know, it's mainly bourbon and sherry, but we've experimented with a lot of different cask types, and we're fortunate it tends to work pretty well with our spirit character. But look, I think it's a challenging time out there for everybody in whiskey as a whole. But I think what we're fortunate with Scotch whiskey is that we made a success of it from the start, you know, way back, and the old firms who traveled the world with their suitcases full of samples set the ball rolling, and there's a bit of catch up with others, but Japanese whiskey has shown the way, and bourbon whiskey is extraordinarily successful now. And you know, you've got whiskies that are incredibly good from different countries around the world. I think the key, the issue is setting up a distribution on export markets is tougher for some of these countries than maybe for Scotch, because of the renown that Scotch is held in around the world, and what a fantastic job the large companies have done in promoting and marketing it. But look, all these new distilleries around the world tend to be making some pretty damn good whiskey, and I love trying different styles and different characteristics, because a lot of people are trying different cask types to mature their whiskey in, and you're just getting some different characteristics coming through. And we all have to innovate. And you could say that the Scotch whiskey industry is a bit old hat, but there's plenty of people innovating pretty powerfully now in the Scotch whiskey industry, and it's great to see. But I do believe that our regulation has been key to our success, in terms of having a set of regulations that everyone can follow. Yeah, you can argue they should be updated a bit more and occasionally changed. But I think that stood the industry, the Scotch whisky industry, in very good stead over the years. And where you don't have regulation, it becomes tougher, because you can't really understand what's going on half the time.
Yeah, I think if you look at the gin industry, it exploded so quickly, and there was no rules or regulations as such. It was just the juniper flavour that we had to have in gin. And now we have so many words bandied about: small batch, artisan, premium, handcrafted, and there was no. And I think by the time people realise, we think, you know, hold on, who's regulating this? It was just too far gone, and trying to bring that back in would be impossible, I suppose.
I think so, and I always say everybody knows what my opinion on, and I don't mind saying. I mean, you know, we work, it's bloody hard to, and we have to mature it for over 3-4 years. You know, you make gin one day and sell it the next. Very clever marketing, and sell it not for a lot short, or sometimes more than a 10-year-old whiskey. So, you know, it's been extraordinary growth in gin around the world, and but I think it's sort of leveling off a bit maybe, and the spark has gone out of it somewhat. But who knows? I mean, you become a gin snob very easily, but when you put a mixer with it, it's more difficult to pick out the flavors, I think, probably.
It's interesting that you say,
but I better be careful what I say. So I mean,
yeah, never. We don't make our own gin at all either, so it's all right.
It's interesting that you say about all the different varieties and the different distilleries, different styles, all these kind of things, and people who are coming into whiskey now. And I would include myself. Over the last maybe 15 years of drinking whiskey, never have I ever stuck to one brand. I found myself starting to enjoy almost everything that a handful of distilleries make, but I'm willing to try lots of stuff. The days of somebody coming in and saying, oh, my granddad only ever drank such and such a brand, I can't see that there would be anyone around who would say they only drink one brand anymore, because there's just far too much to try, isn't there?
No, I think if you're a whiskey fan, you're trying everything, or as much as possible, and there's something out there for different times of the day and what sort of mood you're in, and you can't just be sticking to one brand. I think there's certain people that will buy a brand and buy every single release of a certain brand, and it gets on to the sort of investment side of the market, and actually, I'm sure everybody who started a distillery have started it for people to bloody well pull the cork, pull the bloody cork and enjoy your dram. Don't always stick it away in the cupboard and hopefully it's going to accrue in value. I mean, I get that side of the market and I understand it, but I think on the whole, we're making whiskey for people to enjoy, and not necessarily think it's an investment tool, which I'm afraid that's the way it's going at the moment. That's for sure.
Yeah. And there are distilleries purely making the point on becoming investment distilleries, aren't there? Which is a shame. But we won't talk about them. We'll talk about distilleries that are getting drunk, whiskies that are getting drunk. We have Rajan asked a wee while ago, and this kind of ties nicely into what we're talking about here about releases. And he was asking, any plans to release a 17 or 18-year-old anytime soon? And I would maybe follow that up and say, is there any plans to have a core range age statement anytime soon?
I think, we did a 16-year-old for our festival bottling back in, and that was the oldest release we've done. Clearly we haven't got we have stock of our older, and we're releasing in good time in very small quantities because we don't have a lot of it. But we enjoy releasing some of our older aged whiskies just to show exactly how it's evolved over the years. And to answer the question about age statements, look, this is a debate that will go on forever and a day about age statement and non-age statement. I think we chose the non-age because they're relatively young whiskies on the whole. We do put a bit more information about the limited releases that we put out there, Loch Gorm, and we say it's 9 or 8 or 9, 10 years of age. The same with 100% Islay. For the core, Mackie Bay and Sanig, we don't talk too much about the age. We'll tell people about it. Look, I think we feel at the moment that we're building quite nicely on the back of the style of our whiskies that we're putting out, and we don't necessarily need to put an age statement.
No.
I'm sure the consumers will tell us in no uncertain terms, and we listen a lot to our consumers and gauge opinion, and certainly from all our retailers around who are in touch much more than we are with consumers as to what they feel. But I suppose at the moment we have no plans to sort of put out an 8-year-old or whatever it might be, and we're just we'll see where we go. But we'll certainly be listening to people and understand the arguments. There's no doubt that age statement gives the consumer the understanding a lot more about it than a non-aged single malt that you can put out there that's a mixture of all sorts of ages.
I guess that is changing slightly. Confidence in non-age statements has grown massively, hasn't it, as well? So it's maybe not that pressing an issue anymore.
No, I think it depends. If you're targeting the sort of whiskey enthusiast, which we try to do mainly, and you're prepared to try Kilchoman, and you enjoy what you're drinking, and maybe you're told that it's only 5 years of age, and you're surprised because you might feel it's tastes a little bit older than that, and that's been our fortunate situation, is that on the whole, our whiskies taste a little bit older, and we're not trying to kid people with the age and tell them that it's older than it is. That's for sure. But look, it's something that will run and run and run in terms of the argument. And I get it absolutely. But the other thing is we don't have a lot of old stock because we didn't start producing very much at the beginning. We started 60,000 litres in 2006. That's what we made, and now we'll be closer to 600,000 this year. So that's a big increase, and that's due to sales moving in a direction, and we just need to. We'd like to carry on this journey. We're surprised with where we've got. I think a lot of people, everyone says, well, this was your ambition to get here. Well, I didn't have a bloody clue. I just wanted to build a distillery and see where it took me. And I didn't have an end game at all. It was about just building something steadily and nicely. And now the boys are in the business. That changes my mindset completely. They take it on. I'll retire, and they'll kick me out before I retire probably. But
So when you make that business plan, and obviously we had to do one for the shop and for our gin and whatnot, and they asked for that 5-year projection. How close to that 5-year projection were you in terms of kind of building that distillery?
Oh Christ! No, we were miles off. At the start, bloody miles. Yeah. I mean, completely. I mean, so far off the scale, you wouldn't believe it. You know, the spirit costs a lot more to produce than I forecast, and you know, then you get sales, and you just we got everything wrong at the beginning, and hopefully I've managed to inform a few people building distilleries not to make the same mistake as I did, and I think there's more information around, so I think they don't make the same mistake as I did. But yeah, no, we went through a lot of highs and lows in those days, that's for sure. More lows than highs, that's
but here you are, producing consistently good stuff, and a well followed fan base as well. You've got guys clambering for the next release and always coming at the shop. When's the next Lochgorn coming out? When's this coming out? And that, and it's great to see that you're now what we call one of the established distilleries. I suppose you're no longer one of the new guys. You're in the blood of the whiskey genes, I suppose now.
Yeah. You're out of the new distillery section in the whiskey yearbook, so that's.
English obviously thought I'm an old stager now, so there's far too many new ones coming on. I'll move them out now. So yeah. Look, we're just thrilled that people are enjoying what we're doing, and I never imagined that we'd be where we are, to be honest. And look, I always talk about Jim Swan really set me on the right road, and I'm massively grateful for his input, because you know, he just taught me just the simple things about whiskey, which was, you know, make consistent quality of spirit that you want, the style and character you want, and then just put it into the best quality wood you can lay your hands on, and you won't go far wrong. And he was so true to his word, because exactly, we haven't really diverted much from those early days when he set things up and our production process, and the guys just follow it. We tweak things occasionally because we're looking at different barley varieties occasionally, because we're a great believer that barley variety plays a role in the character of the spirit. But then it goes into wood for 5, 10, 15 years, and those characteristics narrow down. But, you know, he really did help me. And I wish he was around now to see where we've got to, because he'd be massively proud.
I think there's a lot of people would say the same about Jim, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. We talked to him quite a lot during the Blethers. Because he had such an influence on so many people. Yeah,
no, he's an extraordinary person, and very humble with it as well, which is always nice.
Taking you back a few years now, I mean, just in terms of that kind of as an whiskey enthusiast, when would you have said you had a whiskey that made you sit up and think, wait a minute, I think I could quite like this stuff?
Well, I tell you, it was an Ardbeg, actually. And I just love that big heading, no nonsense Islay single malt, and I've always been a fan of Ardbeg and what they do and what they stand for, and just an iconic distillery that produces the style of whiskey that I've always enjoyed. Look, we weren't trying to copy them, and certainly we not, because we wanted a fruit forward single malt at an early age, and they would always tell you their single malt is better when it's slightly older. Not that it isn't good. They've got but yeah, I always enjoyed, and I'm a great fan. Though it's not enough put on the market. Is Kalila is a wonderfully delicate dram, which I've always enjoyed as well. So, look, I'm an Islay person, because when I first I've been coming to Islay for 42 years, and I wasn't drinking whiskey back those days, single malt, and so I was introduced to Islay single malt. And I haven't really wavered from that. But look, I enjoy all whiskey, and I love the Speyside single malts, and I love the high. Look, we're so lucky in Scotland with the range and diversity of our distilleries and single malt. It's people are so lucky and fortunate nowadays to have these, and shops like yourselves that offers the service and diversification in single malts that 20, 25 years ago we didn't have. So it's great. It's a fantastic place to be.
Going back to that initial conversation with Jim Swan, we had Drew Mackenzie Smith on.
Yeah.
At the end of last year, actually, I think it was, and he had must have been a fairly similar conversation about starting up, and Drew told us that the conversation. So, am I going to make this whiskey myself? Do I do that as well? And he was told in no uncertain terms by Jim, don't make the whiskey yourself. Bring somebody in who's going to make the whiskey for you. Were you given the same advice there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was very clear that you need to bring the experience in. You need to bring experienced people in to operate the stills. Christ, I came from a sales and marketing background. I hadn't a clue about production.
And you got sacked from that as well.
So I obviously wasn't very good at that either. So I mean, so we surrounded with people that understood the production process. And I remember my first distillery manager, Malcolm Rennie, who's now gone on to. He's now the new distillery manager at Rosebank, or Rosebank when it is finished. He's gone on there, and he said he was going on holiday soon after we sort of got the place up and running. And I said, "Well, you've got a week to teach me how to do things because I'm going to keep going when you're away." And he was absolutely horrified. He was horrified that some bloody, office, pen pusher was going to come in and run the stills, but I did, And then I rang up Duncan McGilvery, who you'll remember, he was the manager at Brook Ladder, who sadly died. I mean, a fantastic guy who helped me hugely as well. And I just rang him up when I had to reduce it to the cask strength and said, right, is this so bloody complicated, Duncan? Because Malcolm's told me it's bloody complicated to do this. He said, no problem. I'll send you the formula. And off he sent me the formula and I carried on. So, but getting back, of course, I surrounded myself with people who had knowledge and understanding. And Jim he would have been horrified if I'd said, no, I'm going to do it myself, I think probably. He'd have had to hold my hand for about a year and a half before I would let him go.
So what I'm taking off that is that somewhere out there is a 100%, not 100% Islay, but 100% Anthony whiskey out there.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Well, I'm not. Well, no, it was early on, so maybe we've still got that sitting around in the warehouse. I have to confess, though, when I did reduce the cask, I got it slightly wrong, and I didn't reduce them quite. So those are slightly higher strength. Those ones that I supposedly reduced to 63.5, which I didn't. No, they'll be going out, but I don't think I'll be talking too much about the fact that But look, I loved being in the still house. I mean, you get away from the humdrum of everything else, dealing with the banks and creditors in those days, in those early days. I was being hounded for money non-stop. But so it was nice to go and hide away in the still house. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I still go back in occasionally now and keep my hand in. I enjoy it. It's great.
Right. Yeah. I suppose it gives you that ability to come out and talk about it more from experience as well, because
yes, I think so. And I think I tell everybody that I've done everything in the distillery apart from make coffee. I don't know how to make coffee in the cafe. I've seen the bogs. I've made sandwiches, but well, my wife has kicked me out of. I mean, actually, I'm not sure I've got a job left actually because I've been kicked out of.
Oh, just keep on coming on the Blether.
Yeah, well, then of course, lockdown comes along and everyone gets laid off, and we thought that the wheels are going to come off completely, and they didn't. And I mean, I'm sure your business was the same, going online, and I was in bottling. Yeah, 6 of us stayed at the distillery, and we were bottling non-stop for 3 months. 6 of us, it was extraordinary to see what happened during that time when you thought that everything was just going to implode. It didn't, and it was extraordinary to see. So anybody on an online presence, I mean, there was a huge amount of business to be had.
It was incredible. Yeah.
Talking about this sort of lockdown and COVID, I mean, we were obviously on the mainland, and everything was kind of locked down completely. But on a kind of small island, reasonably small population, what was it like?
We were in our own little bubble, really, and we could go about our daily life in a not changing really what we did. I mean, clearly the big distilleries took the decision to shut down. I think for political reasons that they decided. We could have kept going because of the government said we were an essential service, which was quite amusing, really, because making our whiskey today, it wasn't going to be sold for 3 years. But
well, it's all about tax.
I think it was more to do with keeping the shelves in the supermarket stacked with whiskey. But anyway, I mean, we were very lucky that it didn't really come and hit the island at all. We were free from it, really. And it was only when they allowed everybody to go to Glasgow, and they brought it back with them. So then it came back to the island. But yeah, no, we were very lucky. And we didn't have the same issues as probably on the mainland. People just got on with their lives in a similar way, and those that needed to be careful were careful.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much tourism on the island as well. So many visitors. I mean, was it just incredibly quiet for? Yeah,
I mean, it was spookily quiet on the island, and hospitality, which the island is driven by hospitality, suffered hugely. I mean, we just finished our new visitor centre in February 2020, and then a month later it was shut down. So it's great. This year is opened up. We had a bit last year, but it's great to see the tourists. I'm sure you're the same up with you, that they're back in their numbers, and everyone's got the confidence to travel again, and things are opening up. And the sadness is people can't get the staff, and that's an issue for everyone in terms of what's going on in the world. But it's an interesting living on Islay is very it's different. It's you rely totally on the services that you're given, and if the weather's bad, you can't get off the island, so you just get on with it. You should bring people over. You should definitely bring people over. And,
we're definitely going to do that. I mean, it's just it's a case of getting the time in the diary to do it. Absolutely,
it takes a bit longer to get there than go up the road to Glengarry or Speyside or something like that.
Indeed,
a little bit more planning as well, I think. So. Yes. We'll get there, definitely. We have spoken to some customers about it, and I think there's certainly the interest.
I think we could sell a double-decker bus. I don't think that would be too much for a problem.
I think our bus would be sold out with staff alone, let alone
I know.
I mean, in terms of what we're doing just now, this online presence, this is kind of all really stemmed from the lockdown, and it opened so many doors that it's incredible to think weren't there before. Looking back, our access to guys like yourself, guys like Charlie McLean, Billy Walker, Mark Rainier, all these lads, either for us to have a chat with them, it was a weekend, and they would have to organise trips and accommodation and trains and all that. And now it's incredible to think that this is all still, although it feels so accustomed now, it's still quite new to the industry. And in terms of kind of a global presence, is this like a long-term benefit for you guys as well that you think is going to continue?
Yeah, no, I definitely think it is. I mean, I think that we benefited from being able to communicate with our customers around the world in lockdown and through festivals that didn't happen, and laying on events during the day online and stuff. I mean, it was a great way of still keeping in touch with with consumers around the world, and it's changed everybody's outlook on travel, I think, in the industry. I mean, so much more can be done online than actually getting on a plane and going and seeing them. Though the face-to-face chat is something you can never get away. You can't do it online, but it gives the opportunity of having discussions with distributors or customers and tastings and things online, which you could no one ever thought about before. So it's really transformed the way everybody communicates with their customer base, and it's made a massive difference. I mean, it's great because now I don't have to get in the bloody car or get on the plane to go and talk to the bank or something. I just have a Zoom with them, and I think it has transformed the way people carry out business, and in all for the better, actually. I think in many ways. It's saving us money on sending people around the world. I mean, I think it certainly you don't have to think about traveling quite so much as you did, and that you can do a certain amount of that online.
Yeah. I suppose still kind of some essentials. So for you buying casks, for example, you still have to physically travel. Do you check the cask yourself, or do you have somebody? Does Robin in the distillery do things like that, or how do you get your casks?
Well, we
done in Doom, or?
We buy our casks direct mainly. So we're buying all direct from bourbon industry, but as everybody knows, the bourbon industry is on fire at the moment. So there's a slight issue with getting continuity, but we've always bought from Buffalo Trace. And we do the same in Spain. It was again contacts through Jim Swan, who laid on these contacts for me. And we've always bought the majority of our casks direct, certainly our bourbon and sherry. And then for our sort of experimental cask types, we either go direct to a chateau or grower or go through a cooperage for some of our more experimental casks. But, you know, I work very closely with Robin, who's my production manager, who you may have met. Have you met Robin? Or
Yeah. He was warehouse manager, I think, at the time I met him.
Robin. No, well, Robin started with us as a sort of relief stillman back in 2010, working a few days a week, and then he joined full time in 2014. You know, John McClellan was with us then, who sadly died. He was the manager at Bunnahabhain, who sadly died about 6 years ago. So Robin then took over from John, and you know, he's doing a fantastic job. I mean, and he helps me with all the cast selection and the battings, and he's got an encyclopedic knowledge of where everything is in the warehouses. God knows how he does that. But
I remember he was jumping over casks pretty athletically when we were in the warehouse.
Yeah, I know he would be doing that. That's absolutely right. And so we buy all the casks in direct, and that is something a lot of people you get the continuity and of character in you know, when you're buying direct, and that's what we try and do mainly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you previously work in the wine industry. I mean, has that been helpful for you in terms of looking at different expressions? I
think it helps in nosing and tasting. I mean, because I did that a lot with wine, and it's the same sort of thing you do with whiskey. Look, I mean, I think you know, you get to know your own whiskey and how it matures and how it's going to perform. If you need to leave it for a year or 2 or 3 years, and so on. And so we're in and out of the warehouses. And look, I've learned a huge amount from whiskey since I've been in the industry. I've been in the whiskey industry since 1995, and you're tasting a lot of whiskies, but you get to know your own and how it performs in different cask types just with experience of tasting. So everyone would say, well, what a fantastic job you've got. It's great fun, and you learn a lot about your spirit maturing in different cask types and how it should be performing, certainly in bourbon and sherry, and where you want it to be. And I think it all boils down to the quality of the wood. It doesn't always work in certain wood types. I mean, it doesn't always work, and then you have to look at re-racking, and be a fool to think that it's going to work in every single cask you experiment with. But I think on the whole, we've been fortunate that most of our whiskies have worked pretty well, and a lot of people have enjoyed these different expressions we put out there.
How did it start in the wine industry for you? What was the?
How did I start? I mean, I came out of university and went to Burgundy, and went and worked at Joseph Dram, joined the Vendange, and spent I was out there for about 4 or 5 months, and then came back and got a job at Harrods. Worked in their wine department, in their cellar, actually. I was just sort of shoving bloody orders up from down below, up in a lift, and then joined La Reserve, which was Mark Renier, but that was after I was there before Mark bought La Reserve in London, and ended up working for a French wine farmers called. They own Chateau Cisac in Bordeaux, and represented various growers and cooperatives from all over France into the wholesale and retail market in the UK. Yeah,
was that what you wanted to do? I mean, was that when you went to university, and was that the industry you were heading for, or was that a pure accident?
No, I think I didn't know what I wanted to do, actually, and I sort of I enjoy. My father had quite a nice cellar, so I enjoyed what he had in his cellar, and I thought, well, that sounds quite fun. Let's go and give that a go. I had no real plan mapped out for me. I think my father would have preferred me if I'd gone to the army, but I didn't want to do that. So I scooted off to France. And yeah, I mean, I enjoyed my time in the wine trade, but I think we just wanted to. I've been living down in the London area. Well, I lived in Bristol latterly, and then commuting to London was a nightmare and horrible. I did that for 6 or 7 years, and then we just wanted a change of lifestyle. And what better place to come than Scotland?
Well, indeed, absolutely.
Yeah.
All welcome.
No disagreements with that from us.
No, that whatsoever.
Yeah.
So if you were to go back to that early stage with the knowledge of the two choices, and somebody said you can go into the whiskey industry or you can go into the wine industry, which would you choose?
Oh, definitely the whiskey industry. It's a much friendlier and close-knit community. I spent a lot of time traveling back in the early days and met some fantastic people in the industry on the road. And it's a very friendly, we're competitors, but in a friendly sort of way. And all the independent guys and Spring guys and Aaron were starting off at the same sort of time. And I got to know a huge number of people who were helpful. And, like finding distributors around the world, you just ring up someone and say, well, what are they like? Do you recommend them? And that's what I found, hugely rewarding in the whiskey industry. It was nothing like that in the wine industry. It was pretty cutthroat. So, the whiskey industry has this wonderfully sort of family togetherness about it that I enjoy. Yeah. And everyone's there to help each other out. Yeah, we want to sell more whiskey than the others, but on the whole, I think it's a very, very friendly and wonderful business to be involved in. I'm sure, as you'll agree, I'm sure you find the same.
Absolutely. I mean, I guess Mike's been in trade, the kind of trade for a long time. I was in the NHS before I came here, and I'm astonished at how open and friendly and helpful people are. It's just incredible.
Yeah.
So willing to give you their time and to spend time of day with you. It's absolutely brilliant.
I mean, I think I wouldn't change it now, and I think the best move we made is when we moved to Scotland in 1994, and we were living near Dunoon to start with, and I just was still doing my independent bottling and huge amount of support doing that, and then coming and building the distillery was quite interesting, because I think when I moved over here, I knew a fair number of people, but they still thought I was bloody mad, and that it probably would all go tits up at some point, and that was just because no one had done it, for such a long time, especially here on Islay. So you can understand why. I mean, why would someone build another distillery? So, but that, I think you'll understand this more than anybody. It's just the growth at the premium end has just been extraordinary, that no one would have predicted, it's fantastic. It's brought so many people into the industry, whether it's a retailer or a bottler or whatever, a whiskey club or just an enthusiast. It's extraordinary. No one could predicted where it's gone, and long may it continue.
Absolutely. I remember when we were picking the stock for opening the shop, we spent about a year. I had a pub before we opened the shop, so we used our connections there. We opened, Gordon MacPhail was kind of the supplier for, I would say about 85-90% of our opening stock. And going through their list, their trade file, I'm like, I haven't heard of so many of these. So even then, 2015, there was a lot of distilleries like yourself coming on the go that, as myself, a lover of whiskey, but really getting into the industry at that point. There was so much I didn't know, and so many expressions. I'm like, oh my, am I in over my head? Am I taking on too much? Because we're going to have customers coming in asking for stuff, and it's just a case of how do we stock everything?
But then what a wonderful company to work with when you first set up. Gordon MacPhail had such a range anyway. I mean, in terms of what they could offer. So, but no, I mean, I think the advent of the independent retailers around, just not in just Scotland and the UK, but around the world, had transformed what these new distilleries can do, and how they can promote their whiskies in a far better light than they could have done, 50 years ago. So, the likes of yourselves are doing a fantastic job in promoting the smaller brands, you know, a lot of the smaller brands that don't probably get that same exposure, or couldn't have got that exposure in the past.
I think it's an easy mutual relationship, because the quality, you know, whenever I do tastings and things, you're always anxious about maybe, you know, imparting and you know, some good information or accurate information, more importantly. But at the end of the day, the star of the show is the spirit in the glass, and that's what makes the job easy. Is the fact that the quality of the products are there from across the range. So that, you know, that kind of helps too. It's a very much a mutual thing. I mean, I know distilleries are very grateful for the job that retailers do, but likewise, I guess from a retail point of view, it's brilliant having such fantastic products to be able to sell. And when you recommend it to people, actually knowing they're going to enjoy it, is a good thing to be able to.
I think throughout the industry, whatever part of the industry you're in, that everyone's benefiting from each other's experiences, and everyone's pulling in the same direction. So it's fantastic.
So when you're not talking whiskey, if you ever get the chance to not talk about whiskey, what do you talk about? What other interests is there in Anthony Wills?
Well, look, I'm a keen sportsman, and I enjoy rugby. I don't play it anymore myself, but I love watching the rugby. And look, I go walking and we go fishing. My wife's a very, very keen fisher. She's far better at it than I am, but I go along with her, and we enjoy that together. And we can now spend a bit more time doing other things and being at the distillery, you know, 24/7, which we were in the first few years. And look, we love living on Islay. It's a fantastic place to live, and there's lots going on and lots of people coming to stay with us. And you know, when I'm not, I enjoy boating. I love sailing, and if I just need to put my feet up, I'll watch a bit of live rugby on the telly at the weekend, because I enjoy that as well. So no, there's plenty of things now that I do other than talking, drinking, and sleeping whiskey, thankfully. Otherwise, my wife would have left me a long time ago, I think, if I just concentrate on that.
So, who do you support for the Calcutta Cup?
Oh, I think we know the answer.
I'll tell you what. Okay, and I don't mind saying it. I'm English, as you know, so I support Scotland when they're not playing England. And then, unfortunately, I support England in that game. But look, I'm a great fan of everything Scottish, and I support them hugely. But when it comes down to England, I am bloody English, but I live in Scotland. But I will support England. But yeah,
you've got to support your country, absolutely.
Oh, well, someone's got to.
we need all the support we can get sometimes. So. Yeah. So my wife's English as well, so we always have that banter. So that's why I threw that one in there.
Yeah.
Apologies for putting you on the spot.
No, not at all. That's all right.
I mean, go back to the farming and the livestock. Do you get involved with the livestock and things, or is that sort of, have you got farmers doing that? Or?
I'd like to say I did, but everyone knows I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I come from a farming family, but my brother farms down south, but no, we got people who look after the farm. So we've got the farm, but it wasn't the reason we bought the farm. We bought the farm so we can control things for the distillery. But we have cattle, we have sheep, and of course we grow the barley. But we have people helping us do that because we're too busy with everything else. But I'm very fortunate that I've got a general manager now who works for the distillery, but he's a frustrated farmer. So he looks after all things farming, because that was, if he could choose to do something, he would be a farmer, but it wasn't always going to pay the bills. So, and I'm very fortunate that he's come to work for me, and he looks after everything regarding the farm, though we have people actually looking after the livestock. I can't pretend that I go out in the middle of the night and do the lambing. No, I don't.
It's well, we'll have to go into conversation of Russell and your combines.
Oh God!
It is one of Russell's lifelong ambitions to ride the Kilchoman.
Hey, come and drive it. I mean, look, I told Andrew Wood, who looks after all our harvest and does the combining and everything. I said, like, it can't be that bloody difficult. It's like mowing the bloody lawn, isn't it? And he did say, right, you can bloody well come and do it then. So I did have a go, and it's a little bit more complicated than that. But no, Russell, you can come over and have a go. You know,
I'm not going to sleep now. I'm getting far too excited.
Yeah, so I actually quite enjoy jumping in the cab with Andrew and having a blether as he goes up and down the field. And I don't get in the way anymore, which I did before.
What time's the ferry tomorrow?
Well, you're too late. You're too late for the harvest. You'll have to just be on standby, sort of back end of August 2000.
Oh, of course, yes.
At least your combine has a reverse, though, Anthony. Is it the Rossi combine?
Yeah, Rossi. Yeah,
they don't have a reverse, so they have to.
Well, they made a homemade combine out of an old Land Rover.
Yeah.
So they converted the Land Rover to a combine, and it would only go downhill. They couldn't, and it had no reverse, so they had to push it back up.
Push it back up the hill. That's a great story. I didn't know that. It's a great.
Alistair will tell you about that story.
Oh, great! No, fantastic. No, ours does have a reverse and has a rather lot of other complicated bits of kit, but it's about 25 years old, so not very modern, but it does a pretty good job. It's still going. And anyway, I always laugh about the fact it's only used for about 2 weeks of the year, and then it's put away in a shed and dusted down next season. It's extraordinary.
But a vital bit of kit, obviously.
A very vital bit of kit, and I don't know exactly how many combines there are on Islay, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were about 10 combines on Islay, right? Because everybody realizes that when it's ready to go, they've got to go. They don't want to wait for another combine to finish what they're doing before they come and do theirs. So that's the reason why there are so many combines on Islay, because if you don't get it when it's ready, you probably never get it, because you won't be able to get on the fields because it'll be too wet. Yeah. So, and luckily we got reversed. That's I love that story. That's a great story.
Make sure there's still 10 on the island when Russell leaves, though. That's.
Oh, well, Russell, okay, you better just be on standby. Last week in August, first week in September, but you might actually still be on standby at the beginning of October.
I'll take a month and a half off. I'll be there.
Good.
We always get a laugh with Russell's farming obsession. It's we do a Whisky Academy. It's a week long, not too dissimilar to the Islay Whisky Academy, but kind of a lot more experiential, less kind of classroom work. We've made a joke now. It's a running joke now that Russell has to get a photo in a tractor every week. So we have a wee running. We planned on the breaks in the minibus so Russell can stop and watch a tractor.
I was brought up in the Highlands, and my father was a head gardener it was actually the estate that was owned by the McDonald Buchanans of Black and White Whisky.
All right. Yeah.
Scatwell Estate. But my job after school was to take the milk pail. We had a stainless steel milk pail that had to be taken to the farm, which was then sterilised and filled with milk in the morning, which was delivered. So my job at night, after I did my homework, was to go down with the milk pail. And I would take ages because I would be down in the farm, bothering the farmer and looking at animals and discussing stuff.
Right. Oh, well, no, we can say no problem coming over here and setting you to work. No problem at all. No
Fantastic.
Problem. Yeah. Good.
It's so, Anthony, what's next for Kilchoman, or what's next for Anthony Wills, first and foremost?
I think look, I'm enjoying the journey now. I mean, it's a bit more relaxing than it was, and I'm not one for putting my feet up and going off and sailing into the sunset. I mean, we'll be here looking after things, might slow down a bit, and the boys will take more of a sort of controlling interest in the business going forward. That's the sort of game plan, and they can take it on from there. I'm still young, I'm not that old, but I will always have. Look, for them to come back and live on Islay is something they got, very young families, and it's not easy for them to come back and settle back on Islay. So we're here. We'll look after things going on. I've got a great team at the distillery now. and Kathy, my wife, and I can be relaxed a bit more than we did, and we'll see where Kilchoman goes. You know, we're not going to slow down where we're going, or we're not looking to sort of put a cap on production. We're just, if there's more sales to be had, we just make a little bit more production and just keep things going in the same direction. We're loving what we're doing. We're amazed with what people have been saying about Kilchoman, and you know, we're delighted where we are. But it's not, you know, many people have other ideas. You know, just you can slow it right down, limit releases, put the price up. But actually, no, that's not what we're about. We hope that we got the pricing about right. You know, we get enough feedback about that, we'll carry on living here. The boys might have fired me from sales and marketing, but they still need me to look after things day to day at the distillery. And look, I love working in the warehouse with Robin. You know, he's learned a huge amount about tasting, and he's a trained marine biologist, but he's never actually done any of that. He's a farming guy as well. His parents moved to Islay a number of years ago, and you know, I'm very fortunate to have him on the team, really. And look, I've got no plans to sort of sail into the sunset, so I'll still be here for a while.
Good. And I suppose on that, we talk to kind of distillers, blenders, owners and stuff, and a lot of them feel themselves as custodians of the whiskey. You know, the whiskey's been there for 200 years before them, and the plan is it's going to be there 200 years after. But you guys have done something different where you've created, so have you ever thought of that? You know, this whiskey is going to be around for another 200 years in the future. You know, how do you get your head around that kind of?
I don't really. I mean, I'm just amazed that where we've taken it, to be honest. I have to be honest with you. Look, I never set out thinking that this is going to be a brand that would be sold around the world. Never really. I just thought, yeah, good idea. We'll see where we go. And we got to somewhere we didn't imagine we would. And I'm hugely proud of that. And, you know, the legacy is to leave it in safe hands. And I'd said, if the boys ever thought they were going to sell it to the highest bidder, I'll be back to haunt them. And that I've done it, and I'm delighted they're involved, and they need to cherish it and take it forward, and hopefully pass it on to the next generation. That would be my dream. But you know, who knows? Things change very quickly.
There needs to be more of that. I mean, Glenfarclas have managed to do it, so
yeah.
You know, there needs to be more of that. So you'd hope that it would continue that way.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, William Grants have done it, really, funnily enough. I mean, in family based. I mean, and you know, Glenfarclas is a prime example. So yeah, I always look at those and see what they've achieved. But you know, as the generations go through the generations, the first one creates it, the second one consolidates it, the third one's, well, I'm not sure. So then you've got to be careful about how it goes on, and it's always difficult to pass it on and to next, because it's more people involved and it becomes more of an issue. But who knows? I'd love to see the Kilchoman carrying on. I'm sure the brand will carry on, but I hope it's in our hands.
Yeah.
It'd be wonderful to be able to see the future, wouldn't it? But I guess at the end of the day, all we can actually do is make things today and live today and enjoy today. So
yes, no, absolutely good.
Brilliant. Anthony, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Fantastic. Yeah,
chatting to you.
Well,
we say every week. Let's hope for a round 2 sometime.
Yeah, no, look, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm you know, thanks for all your support. I know Ante has been up there a few times, but you know, it's you guys that are out the front there, and so you know, without you, we have issues. So we're very grateful for your support, and thanks very much indeed for inviting me on this evening. And I've loved chatting away to you. It's a shame we should be in a bar, because I can pull a pint now and down that with you.
Well, we're going to be doing that at least. We're going to certainly be doing that late August next year. That's definitely happening.
Yeah. No, I bet you. Well, no, don't forget that. You'll be very welcome.
That's good in the diary. That's good in the diary.
I'll let Andrew know that someone else is going to come and annoy him in the cab.
Yes.
Excellent. Anthony, please stick around just for 5 minutes once we go. We wanted to say a personal thanks to the guys who've been watching. Thank you so much. If it's all right with yourself, Anthony, if there's any questions comes in afterwards, we can maybe fire them onto yourself or Antia, and we can get some answers in. So please note that it is recorded. You can watch back at any time. So if you have any questions watching back, please do pop them in the chat, and we'll monitor that. Russell, next week. So
next week, I think we've probably got a couple of weeks. We'll watch the space, guys, because it might not be the case. But Mike's away next Thursday, and I'm away the Thursday after that. So it looks like we might have a couple of free weeks. But certainly coming up, we've got in the next few weeks, we've got oh gosh, mine's gone blank. Brian Townsend, yes. So Brian Townsend, the author of the absolutely fabulous book Scotch Mist, MISSED, about all the lost distilleries. So Brian's going to join us in a couple of weeks' time. So, but just keep an eye on the notifications that we put out. We may well have something in the next couple of weeks, but if not, we'll certainly see you after that and join us for Brian. And we will have a lot of other fantastic guests coming up into the latter part of the year.
Brilliant. Guys, thank you so much. If we don't see you next week, hopefully we might see you in the shop, online, on other tastings, or wherever. But thanks again for joining us, and we will see you very soon. Anthony, huge thanks to you again for joining us.
Pleasure.
Cheers, guys.
Splendid, everybody. Yep. Good night.